All right, we are back. It is what Tuesday, 31 uh, January. No, excuse me, March. Good Lord. Um, and this is video number 37. And I'm just going to tell you, folks, I'm going down the BCCI rabbit hole. Okay. Now, a lot of people may not think this has anything to do with the Atlanta child murders, and they might be right. But I'm finding this completely fascinating by the information that I found, and we're just going to get right into it. All right. So here we go. So we got the Bank of Credit and Commerce International (BCCI). It's basically it was started in the 70s and in Pakistan by this guy named Aga Hassan Abedi. Okay, and it branched out across the world. It had its tax headquarters in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Its main headquarters were in Karachi and London, and then it had branches in almost every country. Um, and then what it did in the United States is it never applied for a bank charter. It just took over illegally three banks in the U.S. and didn't go about the correct way that we do it. Um, by acquiring a bank, going through the FDIC and Congress and getting a charter and all that kind of stuff, and you know, getting banks, getting scrutiny by bank regulators. What it did is it bought a key controlling interest in these three banks: the one in Encino, the one in Atlanta, National Bank of Georgia. And I found out that the National Bank of Georgia was actually down in Noonan, and then they brought it up to Atlanta in Buckhead, and it was in Buckhead until about 85, and then it moved up to River Edge Parkway. Um, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. So, okay, so let's look at this real quick first. We're just kind of go down the line here, because the thing about these rabbit holes is you have to be very, very careful and vigilant and regimented, or you'll go off in 20 different directions and be completely lost and not realizing how you even got there. Okay. And they do these things on purpose. They create shell company on top of shell company on top of shell company over here, in the Bahamas, in Atlanta, in Luxembourg, all over the place. So it keeps all the regulators frustrated and guessing, and they're not really sure what's going on. So their office, and this was actually, it may not even shown BCCI. It was showing National Bank of Georgia, whose headquarters was at right here on the 16th and the 20th floor. Okay. Now I was in USF&G, which was on the 10th floor. Okay. And I was there most of 85 until about October. We moved up to Ashford Dunwoody, right north of Perimeter Mall. And so BCCI was there. Now, in Tower Place, um, and you remember Tower Place? I told you that right here in the summer of 85, think about August, they had a Porsche 944, a red Porsche 944 that the radio station was giving away, and you had to call in with a certain code at a certain time when they played a certain song or whatever. And we listened to that radio station in the mailroom. Remember, I worked in the mailroom with the gay guys, and I was able to call in, and I got, the 96 caller with the code after the song or whatever, and I got one of the keys. Okay. And so you show up I showed up with what, about 5 or 6 other people, and they had a fish bowl with the keys. And you went by, the first person, second week, third week, fourth week, like that. And the first person got up there and didn't his key didn't work. Third person, key didn't work. Fourth, third person, second person, third person was me. I got up there with my key, and it opened the door. And I got in the car, sat in the seat. Oh my God, smelled the leather, the black leather. Oh my God, what an awesome fucking car. Complete disaster area, okay, for a 19-year-old to be driving a red Porsche 944. I mean, the fucking insurance. My dad told me, you're lucky you didn't get that car because the fucking insurance alone would have been more than the car payment, And so I get in there and I put the key in and turn the ignition, and it goes click, click, and it didn't start. So it only got me in the car, but it wouldn't start the car. And then the next guy, he got in and he won the fucking car. I was so mad. But that was Tower Place. I worked there with the gay guys, and then eventually we moved up to Perimeter Mall, Ashford Dunwoody up there. But I had no idea that on the 16th, we were on the 10th, on the 16th and the 20th floor was BCCI. And I always remember right over here because, like, my boss's office is like facing this way. Okay, he had this big office right here, and then right next to him was the break room, and I had to go in there. One of my job was to clean the break room after lunch, and to go around and clean all the ashtrays. People still smoked in the offices back then. Okay, unbelievable, and also to empty all the trash cans. And I did the mail rounds and stuff like that. So I would go down at the bottom here and get the mail, and then I would bring it up, open it, and then distribute the mail. Okay, so let me write down my time here. So we got 56 plus 53 minus 60 is, all right, so 6:49. Okay, so we did all that. So anyway, that's Tower Place. And then I started double checking in my list here. So I've got 2 attorneys that are linked to Garland, Thieves, and the Atlanta child murders. One was a guy named Neil Fink on the 17th floor. So 3 floors below BCCI. Okay. And then we'll just take a look at him real quick. I'm still working on what I have on him. Okay. But we'll take a look at him real quick. All right. So Fink, he ran a legitimate registry agent, okay, Neil Fink, and so he had this Linda Rickles Interiors at 3272 Peachtree, okay, which is literally right next door to where my mom was working, okay. So if you look at this here, and I wonder if this lady was maybe friends with Patricia McLean, okay. That's the only reason I kept this one, because it's another Interiors, and it's right next to or close to Patricia McLean. So we'll take a look at that. And see, this is how these people work. They know each other. Their husbands, their, all this stuff. They all know each other, okay? And see, it's kind of a fake address, right? I guess she's right here. So she's literally around the corner from Patricia. And it's a small world, the interior decorating business, okay, in Buckhead. All right. You're going to know who your competition is. So I'm certain that her and Patricia would have known each other. Okay. And another interesting thing that basically makes me suspicious of this lady, Linda Rickles, is we got Gilbert Deitch. Okay. You see Gilbert Deitch? Gilbert Deitch was an attorney for Michael Thieves. he was actually indicted with Michael Thieves, okay, for his escape. He helped him escape the jail, okay. And then look, um, he's at 233 Peachtree, which is right downtown there. And then there she is. She's on Ivy Road, which I think is over there by the History Center. And then you've got Neil Fink as the registered agent, okay. And then we'll go to the next one with Fink. You see, he's associated with Deitch, okay. And then you've got he's got patient pharmacy in Decatur. But see right here is his address, 2985 Piedmont Road. That's the only reason I took that listing is because it gives me his address. You see, and so there's Rickles right there, and guess where he's at? He's right here again, right off the Buckhead Triangle, right there. This far road, okay. There's Maple. Garland's right there, and he is right here. So all these attorneys that are associating with the mob, BCCI, and with Thieves are all in that Buckhead Triangle right there, okay? And even the Gatons, okay? For some reason, they love this area. So they're all right either in it, the triangle, or right near it. And right in the center, you have Wayne Williams. You got Garland over here, and you got Wayne Williams with the Gold Club and the Shadowlawn Studio right in the dead center of all these fucking crooked mob, deep state fucking attorneys. All right, and then we got another one here. InfoSafe Information and Security. This is Ashford Dunwoody. That's right up there where USF&G, where I was at. Okay, you got Neil Fink, and then you got his lawyer, 55 Arrow Place, Northwest Atlanta, and then see he's including his wife, and see she's at Tower Place, 28th floor, 2800 Tower Place. I don't know if that means the 28th floor, but the wife's listing the address at Tower Place. Okay, where is this at? Let's find out where this is at. Because once I get an idea where all these fucking addresses are, it all starts making sense. Okay, it's a small club. They're all working with each other. They all know each other. They all get referrals from each other. Oh, go work with Neil. You know, and then what Garland does is he farms off all these attorneys, okay, to do his dirty business. Okay, so see, he's up here, okay, right up close to where, yeah, see, and then, um, we're going to come across another one which is located right there, and then you see, Hirsch Friedman is located like right here, and BCCI is going to move right over there in 1985. Okay. And then, of course, AJ Block is living right down there. Okay, let's see where else. What else do we have on Mr. Fink? Okay. Okay, and then we had at that Tower Place address, we had David Rock on the 28th floor. Okay, another mob attorney, and you can see he's doing exactly the same thing. Okay, so there he is right there. There's David Rock. Okay. Now, he's associated with Thieves back in 1969, starting Global Leasing at 267 Marietta, which is right across from the Omni International. This was Thieves' mechanism for running his porn empire. Okay. Basically, they rented the machines in the porn shops for viewing the pornography. Okay. And then you see there's Attorney Friedman, there's Attorney Gilbert, and you see he's right now at the National Bank downtown. And there's Thieves. All right, and then we'll go to the next one. Okay, and you see right here, there he is, and then he's downtown. He's a registered agent for that. And he also has, I'm still working on him, a business called For Investment. It's another real estate scam, okay? 370 Valley Green. And a lot of these residential addresses, I don't believe they're living there. I believe these are rental properties they're using. Again, they're passing around these rental properties, okay, to launder money. All right. We'll take a look at this one. This is going to be up in what, Northeast? And where is this at? Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be just north of Tower Place. Yeah, see? There's there's a Limelight, there's Tower Place. That address is right there in a residential area. Okay? All right. We'll keep going. It's a small club, man. They all know each other. All right. David Rock again. There's Popular Rock. Okay. That's it on that one. All right. I'm just going down the line here and I'm showing you how all these fucking people are connected. And it's run through a network of attorneys. And the question you have to ask yourself, do the attorneys know they're working for crooked, you know, mobsters, pornographers, crooked bankers, arms dealers? Hell yeah, they do. Okay? They know. They're not fucking innocent. Okay? But they gloss it over as a facade or charade or whatever you want to call it of legality. Okay? And they also offer protection. Okay? This is exactly what Hirsch Friedman was doing for the Gambinos. All right, so now it says they started in April 1982. Funny, just a month after when Williams was convicted in the Atlanta murder trials there, and it was shut down 5 July 1991. And then we've got they moved in 1985. They moved to this address right here. Okay. All right. So I know this address pretty damn well, or I've been by this address pretty darn well. Yeah, right there. Okay. So this road right here, around the time they got shut down, I had gotten out of the military, what, beginning of 91, right before the war started. And I got a temp job in Atlanta working for IBM. Okay. And I worked there maybe 6 months and then I moved to Dallas. Or Houston, excuse me, where my parents were living. And I worked at IBM had a training center over here. You know, it's weird because in '85 I worked for IBM at a temp office or temp place right here, and then from that IBM office, my boss was the wife of the head guy at USF&G, and she got me the job at USF&G. Isn't that weird? Anyway, small world. But anyway, I went back to Audia, which is a temp agency over here, and they got me a job over here off Glen Ridge, working at IBM. I worked there like 4 or 5 months, and then I got tired of that job. I got tired of wearing a fucking tie in summer, and also um, my car. Um, I was up here on the road up here. I bought a brand new car when I got out of the military. Right, like I had a fairly brand new car right before I got out of the military, and I this stupid lady ran right into the back of me. So while the car was getting repaired, I had a rental car. And then one day, I'm in the office over here, and people come running in. They go, "Hey, there's a car on fire out in the parking lot." And I go, "Oh, well, that'll be interesting to see." So I go out. We're all standing around the door, and I look, and then I notice the car that's on fire is right beside my rental car. And I wasn't thinking. I'm 22, whatever. And maybe I was older than that. I think it was 20, 24. I go running out, flames on the car right beside my car. I get in between the two cars, get in my car, and drive off. And my boss went up and hit me on my shoulder. "Oh, you stupid idiot! You should have let the car burn. It could have blown you up." And I said, I don't know." And so then I quit after that. But I used to drive. I was staying over here with some friends of mine off of like Delk Road and Windy Hill Road, like over here somewhere, Cobb Parkway or South Cobb Parkway or something. And so I would drive instead of getting on 285 and fighting the traffic at 8 and 5. I would go like up here and then down here and then down this way, right past where their office is in Powers Ferry, and then I would go up and then over. That's what I was doing. It was crazy. But so they moved there. Let's take a look at that office. Pretty nice little office there. All right. So let's go back to the document here. And it was started by Aga Hassan Abedi. Now, Aga Hassan Abedi, okay, was this Pakistani guy. Oh, but first, uh, now let's look at this first. So there's Aga Hassan Abedi, and let's see. I think there was a Wikipedia article here. He was Pakistani, and he had there he is right there. He had started this business like in the 50s or so with his parents, and then BCCI he started it like in 1972, and by 88 he had a heart problems and a heart transplant, and he went to prison, and he actually died in 95 in prison. So yeah, right there he started United Bank Limited in Karachi, okay, and then basically it was a bank for rich people, BCCI. It was all his rich buddies, the deep state, the people that hang around like Jeffrey Epstein now, okay? I'm sure Jeffrey Epstein was dealing something with BCCI, okay? But the intelligence agencies found out real quick that they could do transactions at BCCI and they wouldn't have to worry about it. Okay. So, what the intelligence agencies were using the bank for is to transfer money to like warlords in Afghanistan, to buy weapons in Pakistan. And so, basically, what they would do is they would get money allocated by Congress, and the CIA would transfer it to BCCI to the intelligence service in Pakistan, and Pakistan would buy weapons in the weapons markets there, and then they would transfer that over to the Afghans who would use that to fight the Soviets. But the CIA was also doing other illegal things like transferring money to the Iranians, okay, to get the hostages released out of Lebanon. This is the whole, Iran Contra scandal thing here. And let's be real clear, Iran Contra didn't start until like after the first hostages, about 83. Okay. So this is long after Wayne Williams was in prison. Okay. A year or so. And so the arms deals didn't start till like 84, 85. Okay. And so when you hear Wayne Williams talk about, he got stopped by the FBI and they punched his name into the computers and Iran Contra and da 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 da. He's just trying to blow himself up, make himself look bigger and better and more important than he really is. All right. But that's him. And of course, the thing about these groups is on one hand, they do all these illegal, shady shit. Okay. But on the other hand, they'll donate to charities and all that. And, they get tax write offs and it also makes their public image look good. Just like, Jeffrey Epstein, after he got convicted of, having sex with a minor, he was donating to all these charities and foundations and all this kinds of universities and all this kind of stuff to improve his image. Okay. This is what you do. It's like the one hand steals and the other hand gives. Okay. So that's him. And then, all right. So, okay. So now we're going to go into this form here, and this is where it gets weird. Okay. So that's the address there. Okay. That's when they incorporated at that address. Okay. Here's another guy with the same name, Valiant Hussein Abidi. Maybe this was like a brother or cousin or something. I don't know. And the one thing I do know about Pakistan is in Pakistan, it's just like all these other third world countries. Almost everything is owned: the malls, the airlines, the car dealerships, the store chains. All of these are owned by a few families. Okay, the cinemas, the news, the newspapers, the TV stations. Usually in these third world countries, they're owned by a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000 families who own everything. Okay, and then the money trickles down from there, and they create loyalty that way. And they may have rivalry against each other, but the one thing they're always united against is the poor. Okay, and the regular common class people, keeping them down and in their place and holding on to power. Okay, they may fight to get market share, but if their power is ever threatened, and they're also in control of the politicians and the military and the intelligence services. Okay, it's like this in every single country, third world country in the world. Okay, and so what you'll have is in the bank, you'll have Hussein Abedi, okay, and then the vice president will be his cousin or nephew or brother-in-law. Okay, it's sort of like what we're seeing happening with Trump right now. Okay, and so that's how the power works right there. Let's see now. We're going to open this document up, and this is where it gets weird. Okay, so you see right here, it's a business formation in 1985. Now, any other business I bring up is going to have their yearly registration year after year. So from 85 to 91, they're going to have 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. They're going to have their annual registration where they paid a fee. They said, this is our officers right now. Yeah, this is our address. But there's none of that. Although they were able to stay in business till 91, but they never ever. How do you get away with that? Okay. And there's never, now, if you don't pay your annual registration fee, you're going to see here revocation or dissolving by the Secretary of State. They're going to dissolve your corporation. They're going to send you a notice and they're going to post that right here. There's none of that. Why is that? Who has the power to stop that from happening? Okay. That's pretty fucking powerful. That you never have to pay a registration fee again, but you're still able to operate business, and your company never gets dissolved whether your business continues or not. That's pretty fucking bizarre. Now look at this. Out of all these corporations that I've seen and I've shown you, I've never, ever, ever seen a registration like this. Never. It's the most bizarre that I've seen. Okay, it's nothing like all the other ones. This is just, it says here, appointment of registration and designation of registration office by alien corporation. Okay, now I've seen some alien corporations, but none of this is anything like what I've seen before. So basically, they're just telling Georgia, this is who we are. We're operating in your business in the state of Georgia, but we're out of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Okay. We have real property, an office in Georgia. Okay. But they don't even say they're operating that National Bank of Georgia. Oh, but they do say this is in accordance with the National Bank of Georgia right there. Okay. And they're saying their headquarters is right here, but they're not applying, okay, for a charter to be controlling interest with National Bank of Georgia to the FDIC. It never happened. They're just telling the state, oh, by the way, we're here and we control the National Bank of Georgia, even though we never went through the process on the federal level to control that legally. Okay. And then it says here, we're right here, and attention, Mr. RPM Carlson. Okay. And then you see right there, Valayant Hussein Abedi, agent and attorney. Okay. He's the registered agent, but he's also related to the owner. And this is out of their London office. You see right here, it says London, England. This is a notary republic, a notary guy named Richard Saville. Now, that's interesting because I wonder if that guy is related to, was it Jerry Saville, the notorious pedophile in England that was hanging out with King George back in the 70s and the 80s and had all these children charities. And is it Jerry Saville or Tony Saville, whatever his name was? Notorious pedophile, necrophiliac. Okay. He would volunteer at children's hospitals. Okay. And at hospitals where they had the dead, or crematorium, or places where they kept the dead. Okay. The coroner's office. And people said he was having sex with dead people. Okay. Not only was he messing about with hundreds of children, all these hundreds of people came forward years later after he died and sued his estate. And he had entrance into the palace with Queen Elizabeth. He was good buddies with Lord Mountbatten, who was the good buddies with Prince Andrew. He also knew Prince Andrew, was also Tony Saville, was really good friends with the king right now, King George. But I don't know if this guy is from the same family. But so you see they're stamping this in England, and then they're presenting it to the state of Georgia saying, fuck you, we're out of England, we're a foreign corporation, we're operating here, there's nothing you can do about it. Thank you very much. Leave us alone. All right, now this is where it gets weird. So you scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Okay. And we keep going, keep going. And I don't know why they include all this paperwork in here, but you see this? This is some kind of English paperwork. You see they're paying some kind of fee, £10. Okay. And they're just showing, hey, look, we're registered there. Now, this guy is the registered attorney for this corporation right here in America, in Atlanta. Okay. Robert Hipple. Okay. And this is the Secretary of State, Connie Spellman, whatever her name is. And this letter will confirm our telephone conversation this date in which I inform you the principal office address for LGM Enterprise at 2401 Lake Park Drive, Smyrna, Georgia. This is the secretary of Mr. Hipple. So what are they doing here? So Mr. Hipple is also saying that they have an address at 2401 Lake Park Drive for BCCI. Okay? And there it is again. You see? They're paying some kind of fee, $30 registration fee. And where's the date? They got a date in here somewhere. Finally, after all this shit starts coming about BCCI in 88, finally around January 1st of 1991, the Secretary of State sends a notice and says, oh, you got to pay this annual registration fee of $30. Okay? But it comes back undeliverable. They're not there anymore. Isn't that weird? So finally, when it comes out in the news and somebody in the Secretary of State's office starts looking through their records, they go, holy shit, we haven't sent them an annual registration fee for 6 fucking years. Oh, let's send them one so we don't get in trouble. Okay, because now they're under investigation. Okay. And so they do, and it comes back as undeliverable. But this is where it gets strange, folks. So if you take this address right there, and I don't know what LGM is. I've looked it up, LGM Enterprise, and I still can't find anything. But you take this address right there. This is where I'm telling you, folks, it is so bizarre. It just I have to go slow and keep it very regimented and organized, or I will completely get lost in all whatever this is. Okay. And I know I've gone a long ways off from the Atlanta child murders, but I'm going to bring it right back very quickly, very soon. Okay? So we put in that address. You see, they're over there. Okay? And then, see, I know this address too. Okay? Because see right here, that's Windy Hills Road. I used to live right there. Okay? That address is right there. Okay? My girlfriend used to live right there. That's my girlfriend used to live right there. There's Cumberland Mall. Okay? So we're going to zoom in on the address right off Cobb Parkway. And in 1985, BCCI is listing this as another address for LGM, which I don't know what that is. Okay? But let's take a look at that address. So if you zoom in here, which it should be doing, but it's not. Hold on one second. I'm completely stuck. Hold on one second. Probably way over on. See if I can get some of this out. Yeah, 91% of my RAM. So it's slowing down quite a bit. All right. Sorry about this. Okay. So if you zoom in, there's a nice little parking lot, two nice little wing looking buildings. And I can bring it down here. What do we have here? Catholic Charities of Atlanta. There's the Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. It's the Pope's land, folks, in Atlanta. I don't know why they'd have it way up in Smyrna for the entire Atlanta area. For the entire northern part of Georgia, you've got the same address used by BCCI Bank, the criminal bank, the one that's using, being used by the CIA. It's the Pope's charity. There's the Pope's flag of the Vatican right there, folks. You see? And now I'm like, well, maybe they got this address recently. Maybe they didn't have this address back in 1985. And so then I look it up. You know me, I got to dig. And I find Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Atlanta, 2401, same address, okay, Smyrna, Georgia, registered 7 October 1970. And if you don't believe me, I will bring it up right here. Now, am I saying the Pope is involved in international money laundering and drug money? No. But I still seem to remember, wasn't the Vatican Bank involved in illegal transfers of money back in the late 70s? And didn't a Pope die in 1978 under mysterious circumstances involving the Vatican Bank? Maybe, perhaps, possibly. I don't know. And wasn't the Pope almost assassinated just a few months after Wayne Williams went to prison and after Ronald Reagan almost got assassinated? Isn't that weird? But of course, it was Bulgarian and Russian intelligence that were to blame for that Turkish guy brainwashing him, trying to kill the Pope, right? That's what they told us, right? And it was a brainwashed, Jodie Foster obsessed, messed up uh, David Hinckley, John Hinckley, that tried to shoot President Reagan, right? Even though if he had been assassinated, you had George Bush waiting in the wings to take over. Anyway, you can go a million directions with this. Hold on one second. I just want to show you the thing here. Hold on. Ah! All right, hold on. Damn it. All right, hold on. Let me pull it up. Let me stop and pull it up here. All right. So there we go. Right. Make sure I'm recording. Yeah, right here. There's Catholic Charities of South Georgia in Savannah, and there's Catholic Charities of Atlanta. And then you see right there, date of formation, October 7th, 1970. So, and then there's the same address, 2401, right there. And there's only the Archdiocese in the left building and Catholic Charities in the right building. Okay? So the question you have to ask, and there's no suite numbers, you see? The question you have to ask yourself is what the fuck is going on? Why is BCCI listing the same address in Atlanta as the Archdiocese of the Catholic Church of North Georgia in Atlanta? What the fuck is going on? Right? And then that got me thinking again about what happened in Portland. Okay? That I remember this story because I worked in the AT&T building, which is this building close to downtown Atlanta. And this story came out that the church was being sued because they covered up the what happened with a priest back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, that this priest was abusing boys at the church. And of course, no one ever told, if you tell, you're going to go to, you know, you're going to go to hell, all this kinds of stuff. Oh, a priest would never do shit like that. But there were hundreds of boys that came forward as men in the 90s and 2000s and sued the Catholic Church, okay, because they knew about this priest and several other priests molesting children at these summer camps at the church. And the reason I especially remember it is because this Catholic church was in question right across the street from where I was working at AT&T. Okay, it's an old church from 100 years before or so, and right next behind the church is this private Catholic school. That the streetcar would go by, and I would go over there next door to it because there was a pizza place I would go eat at. So I'd go from there, walk past the church, and go to the pizza place. But I remember that story came out and how the Archdiocese of Portland in the Northwest had to declare bankruptcy because they had so many lawsuits. They paid, I don't know, $10, $20 million out in lawsuits to all the victims. Okay. And this priest had died already. But they covered it up. They moved him around, and just like they did in Boston, and they never took responsibility for what he had done. And then, around when that came out, shortly after that, on the next street over, the Boy Scouts of America had their headquarters, and they had to declare bankruptcy because the exact same thing had been happening in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where these predators would become camp counselors and would molest teenage boys at Boy Scout camps. Okay. And then they had to declare bankruptcy because the exact same thing was going on. Okay. And so that makes me wonder how many Catholic boys in Atlanta or North Georgia were molested by priests, okay? Which is quite interesting because about half of my friends were Catholic, okay? And I remember one time um, we were all going to go do something on a Saturday. Yeah, we were going to go to Lenox, okay? And they said, oh, well, we want to go with you to Lenox and go to the Sword in the Phoenix, whatever, and we want to go to the game room and the movie theaters, and I had the station wagon. But can you do this one thing for us? And they made it sound like it was going to take 5 minutes, and we were going to take a bunch of food that they had collected at the school for the Catholic Charities, and we were going to take it by the church where they were at, and this nun was going to, count that and give them a receipt or whatever, and then we were going to go on our way. And it sounded like it was going to take 5-10 minutes, but no. When we got there, we ended up being there like 2 hours, helping this old poor nun, count this food and move boxes of food around, and you know, basically she needed some young guys to move shit around. And she's old frail grandma, not grandma, nuns aren't grandma, excuse me, old frail nun, and we did all that. And then we went on to Linux. And then I remember this other time we went down to Conyers, someplace near Panola Mountain, and there was a monastery down there, and it had it was somewhere like east of the airport in Conyers, because I could look up and see the airplanes flying over there as they're going to land at the airport. And I always remember it because it was close to Panola Mountain, because we went hiking there later. But we went down to this pond, and there were these peacocks and geese that were just massively aggressive. And we're like, once we started feeding them bread, they would be chasing us. And so we ran off, cannibal peacocks, we called them. They were going to eat us. But, I'm running out of time. Let's see. All right. We got about 9 minutes. Okay. So it just makes me wonder, what's going on with that? All right. So hold on a second. Okay. So then, now who is this valiant Hussein Abedi? And I wasn't able to find anything on him. He's probably dead. But apparently, this Agana Abedi is highly regarded in Pakistan. I guess he did some good there. And you see this guy's name, Hussein Abedi, although that could be a common name like Joe Smith in Pakistan. Who knows? Um, all right. And then LGM Enterprises in Smyrna. You see, this lady came up on LinkedIn, but I haven't found anything on the group, okay, in Smyrna. So when you're looking at stuff and you have this part here and it is a slash through it, it means it has this, but it doesn't have in Smyrna. And let's see. So I wasn't able to find anything on LGM. Now, it says here that LGM is an aviation company with charter aviation service. But I don't know if that's the same company. All right. And then all right, I'm going to get back to this. Now I want to do this last couple of things before my time ends here. So I was asking what the definition of the deep state is, okay? And it says the deep state is a term describing an alleged clandestine network of non-elected government officials, intelligence agencies, military personnel, and sometimes private entities such as financial or defense industries that work secretly to influence or control public policy independent of elected leadership. Okay, and it goes on here, and every country has its own deep state. Okay, and yeah, so basically, it's unelected officials that are trying to control the policy or the direction of a state. And I think this is going to give the origin of it here, deep state. And let's see. Yeah. So, see, it's a Turkish phrase, derin devlet, deep state. It originally emerged in Turkey to describe an alleged network of military intelligence and bureaucratic elements operating independently of elected officials to maintain a particular ideological or political status quo. Okay. And does it mention this car wreck? So there was a car wreck, and they found these dead bodies, and inside the car was something like a Turkish general, a Turkish politician, a mob, uh, Turkish mafia organized crime figure, and I think a prostitute or something like that. And that's when they came up with the term deep state. Um, and they got a little thing here. Hold on, we'll use this, and then that'll be the end here. All right, let's take a look at this one. I pulled these PDFs are really good. Um, Hopefully, I'll have enough time to bring this up. And this will give you a good visual example of what I'm talking about with the deep state. Now, when we talk about intelligence, and it's just like the Kennedy assassination, there are rogue elements of the government, okay, that aren't elected and aren't, you have people in the deep state that were trying to thwart Obama, okay, that weren't put there by Obama. They were holdovers from the previous administrations, or they had just worked their way up in the bureaucracy, okay, and they were trying to control how that worked. Now, see, this one's got a good breakdown. We'll go over this next time about um, how BCCI's management was set up. Okay. And then there's another good schematic here. And there it is right there. This is a visual schematic of how BCCI worked around the world with its different branches. It's got it broken down by um, like continents. Oh, we got about a minute. And then there. That is what I'm talking about with the deep state. So you've got this here, BCCI, and then you've got all the subsidiaries, and you've got the different clients working around these subsidiaries. Okay. And then in the Senate, I've got one of the Senate investigation, and it goes into the intelligence operations coming off of this. And then, so when you're looking at the Atlanta child murders, it would be like a little sliver off this hub of a wheel, off this Atlanta branch of this organized crime thing that's going on right here. And it would probably be a subset of even that. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at the Atlanta child murders. Okay? All right, so we're out of time. And I'm going to try to keep this as controlled as possible so I don't slide down this horrible rabbit hole. All right.